The three of you, in my opinion, all have very different skill sets. So what I want to hear is actually each one of you telling me about what the other two, what you believe contributed in particular to the business, right? So we've had conversations around, talents and different strengths and so forth, and sometimes it's a combination, and we look at teams and it's always, people complementing each other and they're all kind of contributing. So if you look at Evans and Peck as the business and the three of you as contributors within it, can you share more about what you believe each of you particularly, did well and contributed?
Well,
Mel, I'll start with Mel, and you tell me about Ian and Graeme. So we'll do it that way.
Well, I think I interviewed you, didn't I, when you first came?
Oh, you both did.
We were sitting in that Dogtooth office. Do you remember? That was our first office.
It was
in Wilson's Point. Yeah, that's right.
Absolutely.
You were both explaining to me what you had in mind for the business.
We had something in mind, didn't we?
You certainly did, in terms of the way you wanted to operate and what you stood for, not in terms of what people would recognise as a size type business model.
No.
Yes.
I don't think Graeme and I ever sat down and said, this is the way it'll go. I mean, we both knew the sort of way it was going to go. And I was confident in Graeme's expertise commercially and technically. And I knew he was good at networking and marketing and did all those things which I wasn't very good at. And I was happy to get on and get some work and do what I'd got to do and perhaps pass some skills on to, the new fellas or the ones that we were going to come by with. And I think that's the way it went on. But I think the big thing, when you're a two-man business, it's very important that you've got confidence in the other person.
Yes.
And I did have that confidence, and as Graeme reciprocated, but we knew each other's strengths and weaknesses and could work together. I mean, we didn't always agree.
Yes.
But we were able to resolve the things that we didn't really agree on, or what doing what, and it went forward from there.
Yes.
Basically.
Yeah. Okay. Ian, when you look at Mel and Graeme, what do you believe that they particularly brought into the business?
He's the one that can stand back and view.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Graeme and I are both talking from internally. He can talk sort of
exactly, the person, absolutely, the person who came in.
Say what he thinks now, because we're not
and
there.
watched you over the
We can't fire him at this.
To be honest, I think I've always said what I think. Graeme and Mel have different styles.
Yes.
But both have the ability to draw upon their experience and apply it to a current situation, and that's actually been a feature of the people that have been in the company.
Yes.
Graeme's always had the reputation of being able to calculate anything on the back of an envelope and remembers, I think, every formula that he's ever come across and can run rings around anyone else in the basics of the civil engineering analysis and theory and design and so on. And has always had an incredible ability to apply to the detail, to actually get into the detail and sort out what the story is. Mal, I'm prompted to make reference to a lot of the younger engineers and so on. They've all very much valued the opportunity to work with Mal on assignments, and I've always felt that Mal was particularly iconic as a professional and a professional model. To be honest though, I said before, I think the people, I mentioned in Pearson Bridge, but the people in Evans and Peck were not one-trick ponies. I think Mal and Graeme both were able to address any situation, any problem, and make sense of it and
Yeah.
plot a course to figuring out what the story was, what had gone wrong, what the consequence was, and how to analyse it and how to communicate that to other people in a meaningful way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the styles of doing that are always a bit different.
Yes. Yes.
But there wasn't really a situation where you would say, oh, that's a Mal problem or that's a Graeme problem or
Yes.
issue.
Yes.
I think there was a versatility
In their approach.
there.
And
Yeah.
stuff. But I mean, I still remember my first day, Mel, at
You
Evans
do?
Peck. I do. And you came up to me, you might not remember, but you came up to me and said, "Welcome, Natasha. You know, it was really nice to have you on board." And I was like, "Wow, that's Mel Evans, and he knows my name." And I was like, I was quite excited about this. And you said to me, my door is always open if you ever want to talk and so forth. My door is always open. And you actually sat in the office very close to where I was sitting. So later that afternoon, I did thought I will go and I will try my luck. And knock. You were busy. But you spent an hour with me. You might not remember, but you spent an hour with me sharing about what it was like working in the industry and all the changes. So it was something that has stayed with me.
I should have done.
Sorry?
If I didn't, I should have done.
Yeah, that's what you should. That's right, and you did it. So so absolutely, and that's where some of those. When you talk about everybody contributes, in a different way, in terms of. Well, what we're passionate about, what we just naturally comes, easier for us. And so I think it was also interesting right from the beginning when we talked about, winning work and being good with clients and bringing the work in. And it was, always you'd say, oh, Graeme was very good at that. So it was just like, that reputation that Evans and Peck built in the industry, I think was incredible. And, clients had a real connection, to Evans and Peck. And the staff had a real connection, a real pride in working for Evans and Peck.
That open door was actually a deliberate policy right from the beginning. And we expected everyone to have an open door.
Yes.
So that it was indeed a collaborative and consultative. And one of the features of the firm has always been that anyone was welcome to go into Graeme's office or Mel's or mine or anyone else's to talk over something.
Yes.
Regardless of how junior or senior they were.
Yes.
And that's a really valuable feature, I think.
Absolutely. Graeme, something about Ian and Mal. What do you think that were their strengths and contributions?
I think our styles are a little different. Apart from the fact that we each have significant respect or great respect for each other's capabilities.
Yes.
I'm a bit inclined to think on my feet and move quite quickly, not always in a smart way.
But
and
none of us are perfect.
Mal was more inclined to deliberate over issues, and that was good because he would regularly say to me, "Well, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that?" And you'd have to stop and sort of say, "Well, no, well, maybe we should deal with that."
Good question. Good question, Mal.
That combination was very good. He kept me on the level, as it were, and it worked.
It was complementary, really.
Yeah. So
not with an I, but with an E. Complementary.
And I mean, from my point of view, I've always been a great believer in encouraging people to look at what they've been doing, think about what they do differently next time, whether or not it's gone good, bad, or indifferently, and learn from it. And so people were encouraged to tell us what they felt was wrong or any problems they had, what was wrong with what they were doing, not with a view to pointing fingers, but with a view to coming to a solution to go forward.
Yes.
So I think you've got a question you want to ask me.
Yes.
That was a feature, by the way, of my experience in Pearson Bridge, as well as the feature of Evans and Peck.
Yeah. Because I know that, I listened to an interview back in 1997, Graeme, you did an interview with Engineers Australia, and I think it was part of the history program. And I was listening in, and there was a question that you were asked about, with a particular client. And the client, you were being assessed as to whether you were going to win the work, and the client, I think, in the final stages, kind of turned around and said, "Well, why should we give you the work?" At Evans Peck. And to quote you, I think you said something like, "Well, I've screwed up everything once, but I've never screwed up anything twice." So I thought that was quite an interesting thing, to kind of get your head. So do you want to expand a little bit on that? Because I think you were quite passionate about it.
Well, there's a bit of a story associated that it was a large project in Hong Kong, which was a three-way joint venture. The Australian entity in the joint venture was not the major partner, but was they were the main presence in Hong Kong, and wanted Evans Peck, me particularly, involved in the project.
Yes.
And we'd sort of gone through the initial stuff and come to an agreement. And he said, "Well, the managing director of the main joint venture partner is coming out from the UK and wants to meet you and interview." Okay. So I sat down with this guy and spent a half a day. He questioned me about what we did and and finally he said, and I have to put the English accent on this, he said, "Graeme, can you tell me, why should we use you instead of your competitor?" And by this stage I was sort of up to here with...
Graeme never got like
No.
And the Australian party in the joint venture was sitting in the room, nearly choked. I said, "I've screwed up everything once, but I've never done it twice. We can usually see the problem that's coming." And he didn't know what to say. we got the job. And the guy told me after a beer, he said, I nearly laughed. He said, "I couldn't stop it."
At that point.
But
there's a point to it,
effectively, the point is
Yeah.
that you learn far more from your mistakes
Yes.
than you ever do from the things that go well.
Yes.
Not because of any other reason than you don't spend the same time looking at what's gone well. You always looking at what's gone wrong. And if you look at every project on that basis, what could I do better next time?
Yes.
Even if it's gone well,
Yes.
you're always improving.
Yes.
And that's a philosophy we had throughout the company, and why you've heard us say a few times that we tried to work ourselves out of a job. If you bring the client on, teach him what he's done wrong, encourage him not to do it again, at the end of the day he looks good in his organisation, but he's got a very good memory.
Yes.
The next time a problem comes up that he can't handle, you're the first cab off the rank.
Yes.
And if you're not maintaining increasing your quality of performance yourself, you will work yourself out of a job because your competitors will catch you.
That's right. That's the other angle.
So,
but I think it's an important point you make around the importance to be trying harder, to try new things, and to be comfortable to fail, because there's learnings associated. And I think these days we talk a lot about innovation and the importance of it, but creating a culture of innovation is something where people feel comfortable that if they don't make mistakes, they're not going to be shipped out. And I think we talked about this, which is such a shame, because it's people learn so much through when things don't work out, that you don't want to actually lose the learnings and the experience that goes with that. So I think it's a very valid point that you've got to be comfortable that you've tried and didn't work, and you can try again. You'll get it right.
It goes beyond that. There was shortly after Costain took us over, we just won a large sewage project in northern New South Wales, and we were the first board meeting. The Costain director came to, first Pearson Bridge board meeting. The Costain director came to. I declared a profit of $150,000. It wasn't a huge job, but something like that. The very next board meeting he came, the loss was 150. And he said to me, "How is this possible? In 3 months we've gone from 150,000 to 150 plus to 150,000 negative." I said, "When we analysed the job, we found we made a major mistake in the bid, and we've rebudgeted it. We're not going to give the project team a budget that's impossible to meet.
Yes.
We'll cop the loss and get on with it."
Yes, learn from it.
And he said, "Whose problem was that? Whose fault was that?" I said, "It's my fault. I signed off on the bid. What I do down the line, my business." And nobody got sacked over that. What they did get was a right bollocking because they hadn't done certain things they should have done in the bid, but they never did it again.
Yes. Listen, Ian's smiling there.
But they
He's
stayed
reflecting
with,
on
they
something.
stayed with us, and we retained what was very valuable
Learning.
experience
Yes.
and knowledge. They had a rate of knowledge. So
I think just going back to Ian, I think from my personal experience, I think having people like you in the business was critical. Also from a mentoring perspective, when we talked about this, Mal, earlier, you've said you were looking for that in the quality of the people who were bringing on board, that they were able to mentor and coach others. So I think that the culture of Evans and Peck, I think, Ian, you've been always fantastic at being able to look what Mal and Graeme were bringing and analyse it and actually communicate it in a way that was also quite powerful. And I know there were many times where you were under the pump and you had so much going on, but you always made time. And not just for me, I think I was one of many. So I think that's also an incredible part of what made Evans and Peck so great. And I think that's when we talk about the different skills and talents and strengths and so forth, the way you want to call it, is that you're all complementing each other in a way that was adding that extra value. And where you said 1 + 1, greater than 2, and then it was 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 was greater than whatever it was 20.
Get to that.
So I think it's been incredible, and that's why I said it made it so much more powerful.